Hey, I'm Brad Miller, and here with Jason Medford, and we are walking a spiritual path with you today. And want to ask you today, why are you following us? Why are you watching our videos? Why do you want to follow this spiritual path? Um, I mean, I know we've talked over, I don't know how many hundred episodes, whatever we're at this point, um, of kind of what a lot of the practice entails. It's usually not the glamorous things that, you might think it is. Um, you know, seeing the dead people and, all that kind of stuff, aliens and that kind of stuff that a lot of people talk about. Um, it is, maybe just a little itty bitty part of what all is. I've never seen aliens or talked to dead people. So, like, obviously, that's not a huge part of it. But I've been thinking this past couple of weeks here why it is that, I am doing this, why I care, um why I'm doing the things that I do, the spiritual practices, the changes that I've made in my life. Why? What's the purpose? What's the point of it? Um, you know, because there could be many reasons why. It could be that it's an ego deal. It's something that I want to do because that makes me feel better than other people somehow. It could be that I want to get something out of it. That I think that if I do this, I'm gonna, achieve something, or that something's gonna come to me, or, I don't know, what you're trying to get, but and so I figured why not talk today about why we're on the path is that you're here for. Um, and maybe you who are watching this, maybe you already know why you're on the path, and maybe you're thinking, yeah, it's a really good question. I'm not really sure why I'm in here either. I just kind of found myself here and kind of just followed you guys, or some of the things resonated, and maybe this episode will give you some clarity. I think it's going to give us, Jason, myself, some clarity as well, um, as we go through this. So.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting, and we've talked before in other episodes a little bit about this, but I think, for some people you get kind of thrown into it because something happened, right? Uh, you know, some people use a word like spiritual emergency, other things like that, where maybe something traumatic does happen that completely blows away your belief structure, and you're just trying to figure out what the hell does that actually mean,
Mhm.
right? Maybe you do have an encounter with a disembodied spirit, and you're trying to reconcile your head around it because that's not what you were taught, probably,
Mhm.
right? Is most people are taught, look, all that exists is what you're seeing in front of you with your five senses. So, how can I see this disembodied spirit, and how can they speak to me, or how can I, see these aliens, or feel like I'm receiving telepathic messages from the universe, right?
Mhm.
And so some people are kind of thrown into it because of some, exceptional human experience. There's a whole umbrella in psychology of exceptional human experiences, right? There's others of us that, I don't know, we just kind of go along because we, feel like we're a little pinball in that pinball machine and keep kind of getting moved around. And all of a sudden, before we know it, we turn around and there's been a lot of subtleties in our life that didn't make a lot of sense at the time, but all of a sudden we're where we're at, right? And so I think, it's probably different for each person. I've been more of the latter, where there's been different things that have happened in my life, and I've just gone where it felt like I needed to go. And when I've gone there, I've received confirmations, I've received knowings, right? Not necessarily audible voices, not necessarily seeing with my physical eyes certain things, but just realizing, and as I go down the path, as I do the practices, as I do different things, just continue to get confirmation that I'm in the right place. And so, your questions at the beginning of, why are you listening to this podcast? Some of you are probably saying, I don't know, I just like doing it. I feel
We love
good.
Jason's voice and like to stare at his beard, and it's just a one. Yeah.
Yeah, and so some people maybe that's why. I don't know, right? But it just feels like the right thing to do. And I think that's why some people, are on the path, and that's a great reason. There's other people who appear to be on the path, but maybe for some other reasons, right? Like a lot of the people who have large followings, who are very vocal, who especially have kind of an us against them sort of an attitude. Uh, just search your feelings for what's really behind why they're doing what they're doing, right? And again, hopefully that's part of this path, is starting to understand and feeling and sensing the energy behind people's words and actions, right? Because most of us like to put on a mask. We like to show a certain face to the public. And a lot of these people, again, it's not judgment, because I know some of them are truly charlatans and are just trying to you know lie to people, to trick people, to get them to give them money. There's a group of people that are just charlatans that are out there. I think there's a lot of people who truly think that what they're doing is trying to help and trying to make the world a better place, but they're a little misguided, in how they're doing it, because they're still using uh, fear and control as their method behind it, right? And I've been rewatching the Star Wars movies, so I'm going to be talking more about Star Wars probably. But it's interesting because, if you break things down, there's really the whole idea of fear and control, and that's kind of one side. And a lot of people believe that fear and control is the right answer to peace and to happiness, right? There's other people who believe that love and choice is the path, right? I tend to be a love and choice person, right? But that's my worldview on it. And anytime that we start judging and placing labels like good and evil, or light and darkness, right? We start all of a sudden slipping off the path a little bit, right? Because now we're judging. Now we're getting into some of those other emotions, instead of just realizing that everything is energy. It's just energy. And there has to be protagonists and antagonists in every story, in every movie that we watch, right? And so I think a lot of times the people that are especially, good versus evil sort of a thing, well, is it really evil? Is it really good? Right? And again, as I'm watching the Star Wars movies, right? The Sith versus the Jedi. Well, who's good? Who's bad? Because neither one of them are completely innocent, right? They have different worldviews.
Mhm.
They have different, but does the light need the darkness? And does the darkness need the light? Yes, right? Because, as an example, for Anakin Skywalker to turn into Darth Vader, who was the chosen one that would bring balance again, he did some pretty evil things before he took out, right, the Sith Lord at the end, the Emperor. right? In episode number 6. Not to give it away if you haven't seen it, but I think most people have seen it, right? And so, a better, at least in my opinion, spiritual view is to withhold the judgment and to realize that a lot of things, work out for a particular reason. And it's a much bigger reason over a much longer time horizon than we can fully comprehend in our human incarnated form. And that's okay, right? But being on the path is giving up a lot of the things that are a part of being human and reconnecting to spirit, which is much greater than just our little physical bodies.
Yeah, because there wouldn't be, I mean, without the Sith, there's no reason for the Jedi, right? So I mean, you have to have that balance there.
Well,
Um,
and you see, there's we're living in a time of dualism, and we're moving back more
mhm,
to unity consciousness. But there's a reason why we have dualism, right?
mhm.
Can we appreciate the sunlight if we don't have darkness? Can we appreciate the warmth of summer if we don't experience the cold of winter, right? We need both things. And so to try to necessarily fight against, that's not necessarily, why we're here or what this path is about. It's not about fighting against things. It's about being a certain way, about doing things in a certain way, about not doing things in a certain way, right? Because there's doing and there's not doing. And in fact, most of the work that is the most beneficial is the not doing. It's the things that people will never see you doing. You will never get credit for it, and that's okay because that's part of the path. And I'll just give you a couple of simple examples, right? If you have a religious background or not, saying a prayer or some sort of a prayer, however that looks to you, we don't think that really does anything because we physically can't see anything. Right? We don't see anything physically with our eyes when we're praying with somebody, right? But how many times have you prayed for something? Maybe a loved one was sick, and you placed awareness and attention on them and sent them healing love and asked the universe to heal them. Now, sometimes they don't heal because that wasn't the plan. But how many times do they? Right? And isn't it amazing that placing a little bit of awareness, placing saying a prayer, a ritual, whatever it is that you want to do, can actually make a difference in our physical life too, right? But again, it's not something that people see. People don't see you praying, right? Unless
I mean,
you're
they should kneel in church or something, but
well,
yeah,
and if you go back to like a biblical story, right? And Jesus, I mean, he laid into the Sadducees and the Pharisees for that particular thing, right? You go to the temple and you do your little things while everybody else is watching. So why are you doing it? Is it because you want to see everybody else, have everybody else watch you do it? You want to get the ego stroke from that? You want to be seen as pious, as holy, right? If that's your intention, then that's what you're going to get because we always get what we're expecting. You get what you expect, right? And so it's yeah, it's hard to explain in a way, but what you
yeah.
see is what you get. You get what you see, what you perceive is what you get, right?
Mm.
And so, again, if your intention is to be seen by other people, then your intention is not really maybe where it could be. Or maybe there's a higher intention or a higher purpose that you could be doing it, and you don't care whether people see you or not. And it doesn't matter. You don't need a million followers. You don't need people to pay you money for it. Again, think about, go back into ancient history. Think about people who were healers. Did they get on social media and say, "Hey Brad, have I got a deal for you? I'm a wonderful spiritual healer. Buy my course and I'll show you how to heal too. But even better than that, why don't you come to me? You can pay me tens of thousands of dollars and I'll heal anything that is ails you." Well, that's not how it worked, right? That's not how it works today either. And so if people try to do it different, they're going to get, right, what they're giving. And I don't know, we got off on that because I wasn't intending to necessarily go there. But I think, back to your question of why are you on the path? We all have to answer that. We all have to continually stalk ourselves, for what our intentions truly are. Because I'll tell you, a lot of times I think my intentions are noble, but then when I start stalking myself, I realize, oh, maybe my intentions weren't as noble as I thought they were. Maybe I need to check myself. Maybe I need to do things a little bit different.
Mhm. Yeah, because you can start off with this with a particular intention, and it can be very easy to slide off one way or the other, especially when it comes to the ego, because the ego will wants to jump in at any chance it can get and say, "Oh, well, we're doing this, so how can we use this to our benefit? How can we make some money off of it?" And not to say there's anything wrong with making money, but again, it just goes back to examining why you're doing the things. Is it because of the money? Has it turned into this is a way that I can make money from people by offering healing and things like that? Or is that just kind of the secondary thing that I do the healing and then they give me money because of their appreciation as an offering an ini to exchange the energy back for the healing that I've done? Like it's a different thing, but it's really easy, I think, like I said, unless you're checking yourself to go and slip into some of these things, into the ego, and so it's important to keep going back and reevaluating, reexamining why it is that you're doing the stuff. Is it still the reason that you think it was or that you started? Do you need to make some course corrections? I mean, we talk about the analogy of walking a path. Are you still on the course? Are you still on the path? Or maybe have you wandered off the path a little bit and you need to right yourself a little bit, come back on? Have you started to wander a little bit? Do you need to bring yourself back to the path? So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue. Like, so I think, and then again, this is something I've been thinking about. For me, why is it that I got on this spiritual path? Why is it that I continue on the spiritual path? Because it's one thing that's to start, but it's continuing. It's to still do the things, the practices and all that stuff to keep going. Why is that you keep doing it? And so for me, and again, this is after kind of sitting and think of this for a while. It's this sense or this desire for more. There's this feeling that there's something else bigger that I need to be doing, that I can be doing to help others, that I can be something. The image that I kind of gave Jason earlier was the idea of I kind of feel like a butterfly in a cocoon. I've developed my wings. I've been in there, came in as a caterpillar, got in my cocoon, did some transformational stuff or whatnot, and I kind of feel like I've got my wings, and I just kind of want to stretch, but this cocoon is just kind of holding me. Like I know there's something outside this cocoon. I'm not just a worm in a sack. Like there's something out there, but I just kind of pushing against and trying to figure out how to get myself out so that I can actually get out and spread my wings and be the butterfly that I am. And so to me, the spiritual path is me trying to get out of the cocoon, is trying to
Mhm.
get out so that I can spread the wings for whatever that ends up being. Like I don't know what that being a butterfly is for me. I don't know what that looks like. But there's just something that keeps pushing me to push against the sides of that cocoon. Um, and so
Well,
that's why I continue on it. And
I think it's a great analogy in that, if we think about it this way, right? We're all in these human bodies. And if we look at our human bodies, it feels like or looks like we're just a worm in a sack. But as we come to know who we really are, right, like Brad just shared, he knows he's a butterfly. He knows he's transforming and trying to break out of this shell, right? And the more that we know ourselves, the more that we do certain things, the easier it is for us to actually break out. But it takes work. And I think that's where, a lot of people end up giving up, straying off the path, going, oh my gosh, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I can't do it. Right. And I've seen people do this all the time, because there's people who are just curious, and there's people who jump into the deep end of the ocean or the pool. Right. We can talk about those too. But I think what's interesting is, a caterpillar has to struggle, has to work to get out of that cocoon. Why? Because part of it, that's what makes it strong. And so it can survive outside of the cocoon. Chickens and eggs are the same way,
yep.
right? A baby chick has to break itself out of the egg. It has to do the work. It has to break itself out of the egg. If you try to break the egg open for it, the chick will die, right? Because the chick has to go through that transformation, has to gain the strength, has to do the work before it can go from that embryo inside the egg to something bigger and grow into what it really is, right? And it's the same way with all of us spiritually as well. Until we start waking up, we think we're all little embryos and we're worms. But we're so much more than that when we start remembering who we are. And when we start doing the work, and when we start transforming, and when we start, trying to get out of that cocoon and get out of that egg, right? And along the way that it really starts. Now, like I said, there's a lot of people on the path, because you kind of asked me about this before we started recording. Jason, why did you just jump into the deep end of the pool? I don't know. That's the way I am, right? Maybe I'll get some clarity as we talk about it. But I see a lot of people who are just more curious.
Tipping
And
their toes in.
yeah, and they're just dipping their toes, and it's good to be curious. Um, but curiosity by itself is not good enough. And so, a lot of people may ask me questions, and I'll say something like, "Oh, well, why do you ask that question?" "Oh, I'm curious." "Oh, well, it's good to be curious." Now, do you think I answered their question? No. Because if you only want an answer because you're curious, it's just going to lead to another question. Why is it that you really want to do it? What truly is your intention behind it? Right? If you're just curious, you're just dipping your toe, great. But you're not going to make much progress, which is also probably a good thing, right? Because once we know, we can't unknow. Once we know, we're held accountable and responsible for what we know. So it's better to be blissfully ignorant than to actually have the information and not do anything about it, right? And so in a way, it's a blessing for people who are just dipping their toe and then they're like, oh my gosh, it's a lot harder than I thought, right? And so take it like with physical our physical health, right? A lot of people may say, oh, I'd really like to lose 20 or 50 pounds. I'd really like to feel healthier. And it's like, great, okay, well, here's the simple practices of eating healthy and some basic exercise and things to do, and you'll lose the weight and you'll feel healthier. But people start doing it and then they stop, right? And we see evidence of this all the time. Beginning of every year, people sign up for gym memberships. After 30 days, they no longer go to the gym. Why? Well, gosh, it's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. Can't you just give me a pill that I can take that'll make it all the fat burn away on my body? Yeah, you can. I think it's called fentanyl. And people die from taking it, right? It doesn't work that way spiritually. And in fact, if you don't do the work, or often when things come too easy for you, we don't appreciate them.
Mhm.
And if we haven't had to break out of that shell, break out of that cocoon, if we haven't done the work, then we're not going to have the long term benefit of it.
Mhm.
And there's just no other way to do it than doing the work.
Yeah,
The only way is the way.
it is the way.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and again, nothing against people who decide that this is the path they want to take, but it's kind of the issue with doing plant medicine. I know a lot of people try to use plant medicine as a shortcut, essentially, to some sort of involvement, spiritual growth, or whatnot. And much like the pill there, you're talking about, it might get you something. It may get you some, you may achieve it to some point or whatever, but without going through the process of getting there, you're not going to appreciate it. You're not going to know what to fully do with it. Um,
Well, you're not going to integrate it.
right.
And this is the issue that is so harmful for people that only want the quick fix of, I'm going to go do plant medicine, I'm going to have this great spiritual awakening. Well, you don't get to choose the journey. The journey chooses you. And the universe gives you what you need to hear. Now, the hard part is sometimes it scares the shit out of people what they experience, which is okay. It's part of the process, you know. Sometimes I've been scared shitless about certain things, but it's about transforming and transmuting and learning and working on and doing the things, right, that are important afterwards. Because if not, then a lot of people kind of spin out and they're like, whoa, if that's what it is, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want anything to do with it, right? And it's
Hmm.
like, I'll take as an example what some people call ascension flu or ascension symptoms. As you move along a spiritual path, guess what? Some days you don't feel so good. And it's not that you're having a heart attack. It's not that, different things. It's energy, but it's part of the process. And sometimes I get knocked. A week ago, couldn't function for 2 days. If I didn't know what was going on energetically, if I didn't have a bigger picture, if I hadn't experienced some of these things before, I would have gone right to OMG, I'm
I'm
dying.
dying. Yep.
I'm going to be dead, right? But that's not what it is. right? And so I transmuted it. I work through it, and I'm stronger on the other side of it. But a lot of people, again, you have to do the work. These things will happen, and it's okay. It's part of the process, right? But what happens is when some of these things happen to people, they freak out and they go right back into the fear, into the anxiety. Oh my, OMG, I'm gonna die, blah, 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 right? But that's not what's happening. And you have to be willing to, like I said, just jump in and do it.
Mhm.
And not sit on the sideline and go, "Ooh, that looks really tough. I don't want to do that." Well, if you don't want to do that, you're not going to get the results.
Mhm.
If you want to get stronger, you got to do push-ups, you got to exercise, you got to lift weights, do something if you want your body to be physically stronger, right? And even just like that, if you I used to lift weights as part of my exercise routine, and you overdo it one day, you're pretty sore for a couple days. But what do you know, right? Well, that's because your muscle tissue is breaking down, getting stronger, right? It's part of the process. Same thing spiritually as well.
Mhm. Yeah. The other image that kind of came into my mind was like of going to college, university, where you get there and it's like, wow, this is completely different than when I'm in high school. This is so tough, and if you just kind of sit there and kind of get phased by it, you're going to fail out, or you can say, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to hire someone to take the test for me so that I get an A. I pass the class. This is too hard. I can't get up at 7 in the morning, whatever it is. Like, I'm just going to hire somebody to take the test for me. And that might work. You might end up getting your A or whatever it is and passing the class. Um, but you're not learning anything, and then you take the next level class and then you're screwed because you didn't learn the stuff from the first one. You know, 102 builds on 101. And if you don't learn the things in 101, then you're not going to be able to do stuff in 102 or 103 or 207 or, spirituality 521, whatever the class may be that you're looking to do. Like,
Spirituality 521, sign me up, right?
there you go. Yeah.
No, but I think it's also because it ties back to something else I've been thinking about too from a business perspective is the whole idea of knowledge, skills, and competencies from a personal development standpoint. Knowledge is information that we're given, right? But the knowledge by itself doesn't do you any good unless you
Hmm.
take that knowledge and apply it to particular skills. You practice those skills until they become certain competencies, right? And the more you practice those skills, the higher your competency level becomes. It's the same thing spiritually as well. You can read all the holy texts you want to, you can listen to all the videos online from people. But until you actually, like the butterfly and like the chick, actually start doing the work and practicing and flexing your muscles and doing and the not doing and practice it and do the work, you're never going to build those skills or competencies, right? And I know, like I said, last week I normally don't get hit like that, but literally for 2 days, I was out of it, and I thought I was going to die, right? And shared some of my experiences with some people that I know, and that's what one of the person says. They're like, "How did you not feel like? How did you not go to the place of thinking you were having a heart attack?" I don't know. I've been practicing this long enough. I know the signs when I see them. The fact that they were way more intense and many more of them all at the same time,
Hmm.
right, could be disconcerting to a lot of people. But I've lived with it. I've learned how to deal with it. And I know what it is. And I just work through it. I use my will. I work through it. I learn how to adapt, right? uh, you know, my left hand got a little lefty, shakes uncontrollably at sometimes. Now, if people were to look at me, or if I were to go online and read up about it, oh my gosh, I've got Parkinson's disease. No, I do not. I know what Parkinson's disease is. My grandfather had it. This is not what that is. The fact that it only affects my left hand and only affects certain fingers at certain times, and it comes and it goes, is energetic, is things that I'm working through, right? But I've had to learn how to adapt. I can't do certain things with my left hand sometimes that I used to be able to do. I have to work on it and learn how to adapt and work through it, both physically and spiritually, as well. Right now, perfectly fine. Nothing going on, right? But I have to be careful. If I'm holding my coffee cup with my left hand and it starts, I'm going to spill everywhere, right? But we learn how to adapt. We learn, how to grow. Like you said, I mean, I'm sure for that poor little chick, it's got to start to get uncomfortable inside that shell. Just like you were explaining, it feels like you're a little uncomfortable in the cocoon and you got to break out.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And the only way, to the other side is to go through it.
Yep. So there you go. Um, like I said, I think it's important to go back and think about this, and not just once, but to come back to it again and say, am I still doing this things, doing the path? Is it still for the same reasons? Are my intentions still what they used to be? What I started with? Are they pure? Are they towards growth and things? Or is the ego sneaking in? Is it starting to say maybe what can I get from this? What do I get out of doing X, Y, and Z? Or what kind of fame do I get? Can I start a famous podcast, or can I be a TikTok star if I start going through this? Or what is it that I'm trying to get by doing stuff? um I mean, we've done these podcasts now for over 100 episodes. We get nothing from it. We get no payments, nothing. We put all the work into it. You think at this point we could start, I don't know, selling some ads or something, or having sponsorships, or charging people membership to listen to it, but that's not what we're doing it for. Like, we're doing it because we want to be able to share our experiences with you, and let you, or help you to travel this path yourself, by listening to what we're saying, by maybe taking some ideas, by just having others that are going through the same thing. um and so.
Well, I think it's important too, as we wrap up, that, regardless of why to begin with, we have a choice today
Mhm.
for how we go forward.
Yep.
Right. So if you got on the path thinking I'm going to make all kinds of money and I'm going to help all these people and I'm going to whatever, and now that intention has changed, fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. Or if
Right.
or if or if you start to realize, oh man, maybe I'm letting the ego creep in a little bit. It's okay. Stalk yourself, work on it,
Mhm.
make a different choice today, right? Because there was a time, again, where I was like, I wanted, you know, again, I think I hope from a good intention of, having, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, be able to benefit from whatever I might be saying, right?
Mhm.
Now I really don't care. I just show up and I say what I feel inspired to say, whether anybody listens to it or not, I don't care. But it's taken me a while to get to that point.
Mhm.
It's taken me a while to continue to stalk myself and realize, well, maybe there was a little bit more ego there.
Right.
Now, it doesn't stop me from doing it, right? Because again, I know that regardless if nobody else listens to this, the time that Brad and I are on here recording good things are happening in the world. The frequency that we're bringing to the world, even just by recording these, is a good thing. It's a not doing. It's making a huge difference in the world. Now, the benefit is, hey, if people listen to it, they get some benefit from it too. Wonderful. Wonderful. Right? But when Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching, was he thinking about selling 1 million copies of that book? No. Do you know why he wrote it? Because as he was leaving town to go be a hermit, the guard at the edge of the town said, Master, you can't go away. We need your teachings. Would you please write down some things for me so that we can continue to have your lessons? So he sat down for a day and he wrote out what is now the Tao Te Ching and gave it to that soldier. And off into the wilderness he went. Now, it's probably one of the most widely read of what you may call a holy text that's out there. The way is the way, right? But why did he do it? It wasn't for following, right? It wasn't him sitting there going, "Oh, in 2000 years from now, people all over the world are going to be reading this in their own language." No, he just showed up and he did what he felt like he needed to do to serve that one person, and it grows from there. And that's what it is for all of us too. We don't have to uh, just show up and serve other people directly around you. That's all that matters. Don't do it for the fame, don't do it for the money, don't do it for the glory. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. It helps somebody else and it helps you as part of the process. But hey, it helps somebody else because everything that we can do to help somebody else grow a little bit, to get a little bit more light in their life, to help encourage them to break through that chrysalis or the egg, of saying, hey, Brad, because I'm here to tell you, my friend, Brad, keep fighting, keep fighting and break out of that chrysalis because you are a beautiful butterfly, right? And when you fully break out, oh my gosh, things are going to be a lot different in your life than when you were a caterpillar. And you're going to know it when that happens. So, with that, we should probably wrap up for the week.
On that note,
On that note, so everybody have a great week, and we appreciate those of you that have listened until the end. May you be blessed. May you continue on the path in whatever form or fashion that looks like for you. Um, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.
check you guys then.